one of the most important cultures of prehistoric Europe, is also one of the least well known. Around 5,000 years ago, the Globular Amphora culture occupied much of Central and Eastern Europe. Their culture eventually disappeared, but ancient DNA analysis has revealed that they contributed substantially to the ancestry of the Corded Ware culture, whose descendants would go on to spread across much of Eurasia. They were among the last great Neolithic societies of Europe, but they already shared several features with the later Corded Ware and other Indo-European societies. So much so that before the ancient DNA revolution, many archaeologists thought that they may already have had steppe ancestry, but they didn't. They were farmers, but cattle occupied an extraordinary place in their lives. They buried some of their dead with rich grave goods, including stone axes, ritually buried teams of oxen, and left behind some of the most distinctive pottery in prehistoric Europe. And despite their importance, they remain one of Europe's least familiar prehistoric cultures. So who were these people? Where did they come from? Why were cattle so important to them? And what ultimately happened to them? This is the story of a people who helped shape one of the great turning points in European prehistory, the Globular Amphora culture. You can actually model my ancestry as a mixture of the Globular Amphora culture and another ancient European culture like the Corded Ware, and I know this thanks to this video sponsor, MyHeritage. For a limited time, you can now get your own DNA kit from MyHeritage for the ridiculously low price of $19, euros or pounds using my link and code. This is by far the cheapest price I've ever seen for one of these kits, so if you're interested in finding out about your own ancestry, then grab this now using my link. When you get your kit, you follow the instructions and send it back. In the process you get to see your ethnicity estimate. I know that I'm British with an Irish grandparent, and you can see this reflected in my ethnicity estimate here. And now that they've added new ethnicities and reference panels, you get more detail than ever. My favourite feature though is called Ancient Origins. It analyses your DNA by comparing it to specific ancient reference populations from various eras, and you can do this in many different reports. It's the Genetic Similarities report that compares your genome to 2 or 3 specific ancient populations, which is where I can see these pretty good fits that include the Globular Amphora culture. And when you click on any of these ancient groups, MyHeritage gives you all this extra information on that population's genetics, like their haplogroups and links to published genetic research on them. With my code DANDNA, you're not only getting this extremely low price on the DNA kit, you're also getting a 30-day free trial and free shipping. So to find out about your own ancient origins, click the link in the description box or scan the QR code on screen and use the coupon code DANDNA to get your DNA testing kit for the temporary low price of $19, euros or pounds. Thank you very much to MyHeritage for sponsoring the video. The Globular Amphora culture existed between roughly 3200 and 2700 BC. At its greatest extent, it stretched from Germany to Ukraine, making it one of the largest archaeological cultures of Late Neolithic Europe. They're known today as the Globular Amphora Culture, or phenomenon, and sometimes the groups are called the Globular Amphora communities. Their modern and rather silly sounding name comes from their distinctive pottery. Archaeologists often named prehistoric cultures after the most recognisable artefacts they left behind. Originally, in the early 20th century, this society was called the megalithic culture because of its stone tombs. Later though, it came to be defined by its rounded, almost spherical pots with narrow necks and handles. Many were decorated with cord impressions, incised patterns and small applied knobs. These were diagnostic because they were found in graves and in settlements, or the pits associated with the settlements from this culture. These pots were used to store and prepare food, and residue analysis shows they once held all kinds of substances, even fish and seafood in the Eastern Baltic groups of this culture, but more commonly dairy. You can imagine them sloshing about with milk. Why were they globular, though? Well, I should say they also made bowls, cups and beakers and other kinds of pottery, but the globular vessels were probably distinctive for several reasons. Perhaps the shape distributed heat well, and perhaps it resisted breaking better when travelling in the back of a wagon. More importantly though, these pots seem to have become a cultural marker. however the style first developed, it came to express a shared identity across this vast region. We can see that symbolic importance because they were so often placed in graves. Sometimes they even seem to be made for burial. This is somewhat reminiscent of the later Indo-European cultures like the Corded Ware Culture and the Bell Beaker Culture. But the Globular Amphora Culture emerged from the earlier funnel beaker world, sometime between about 3400 and 3200 BC in northern Central Europe. Exactly why this new culture appeared isn't entirely clear. Ancient DNA shows there was substantial population continuity between the funnel beaker and the Globular Amphora cultures. However, the Globular Amphora people were also genetically distinct, carrying somewhat more hunter-gatherer ancestry and a different dominant paternal lineage, a different subclade of I2A to the funnel beaker. But exactly why this new culture appeared out of the funnel beaker culture isn't known. Some archaeologists think that growing social tensions within the funnel beaker world encouraged certain communities to intentionally separate themselves socially, developing a more mobile way of life with a stronger emphasis on cattle and distinctive new ritual traditions. Over time, these traditions spread across much of Central and Eastern Europe as these groups successfully expanded. And this to me is one of the aspects that makes this society so interesting and so unusual. They didn't necessarily replace the funnel beaker communities wherever they spread. In many regions, the two cultures appear to have lived side by side, exploiting different landscapes and soils. Their contrasting economies may have even complemented one another. You wonder how this could have worked in practice, and what diplomatic or social arrangements helped these neighbouring communities avoid constant conflict. Did they perhaps see one another as related communities, sharing a common ancestry but following different ways of life? It's interesting to consider what an archaeological culture actually represents, and how these may or may not reflect ethnic identities. No doubt the answers will be different for different cultures throughout history. Even within the Globular Amphora world, there was no single uniform society. Archaeologists recognise several regional groups, distinguished by their own cultural practices and exchange networks, yet united by a shared identity expressed through pottery, burial customs, and cattle symbolism. But the Globular Amphora world occupied the broad frontier between the farming societies of Central Europe and the Pontic steppe. It was here that some of the most important interactions of late Neolithic Europe would soon unfold. Like the funnel beaker people, they cultivated crops and raised livestock, but cattle dominated their economy. They provided milk, meat and hides, and the traction needed to pull wagons, and perhaps ards for ploughing. But they were far more than simple livestock. Unlike the Cucuteni-Tripilia settlements further to the east that I like talking about on this channel, Globular Amphora communities usually lived in small villages or farmsteads and camps. Their timber houses were modest, probably lightly built, and are often poorly preserved, making them much harder to reconstruct than the famous longhouses of earlier Neolithic Europe. Many archaeologists think that these communities were relatively mobile, moving cattle between seasonal pastures, with temporary structures such as tents forming a crucial part of this way of life. And that's why the Globular Amphora people are known mainly through their graves, which reveal a remarkably rich ritual world. Some graves contained a single individual, while others held several people together. These are often interpreted as family groups, buried over time. The dead were commonly placed in stone-built kists, or simple earth graves, sometimes beneath low mounds, or marked with stone settings, and in some regions older megalithic tombs were reused. Grave goods frequently included the distinctive globular amphorae, along with flint axes, blades, amber ornaments, bone tools, animal teeth, and occasionally copper objects. Some burials also contain traces of burning, and cremation is known as well, suggesting that fire sometimes formed part of their funeral ceremonies. Red ochre, along with white and yellow clays, was sometimes placed in graves too, recalling burial customs that are more famous among the steppe cultures. Animal remains have been found in most properly excavated graves. Usually these were pig bones, or more rarely cattle, sheep and goats. Sometimes wild boar tusks that they wore as pendants were also deposited in the graves. But cattle occupied a special place. They sometimes buried sacrificed teams of oxen or pairs of yoked animals, representing an enormous sacrifice of wealth and labour. This kind of animal sacrifice is exceptionally unusual in Neolithic Europe and looks strikingly similar to practices that later became associated with Indo-European speaking societies. In fact, much about Globular Amphora society resembles the later Corded Ware culture: greater mobility, an economy centred on cattle, stone battle axes, wagons, individual burials with grave goods, and even some of their ritual traditions. To earlier generations of archaeologists, these similarities suggested that the Globular Amphora people represented an early wave of Indo-European expansion. Today, thanks to ancient DNA analysis, we know that interpretation was wrong. The best, most up-to-date work on the Globular Amphora is this one, published by Sidestone Press. You can read the whole book for free if you want to get stuck into the details. As always with my videos, key sources are listed in the description. Many Corded Ware populations inherited around a quarter of their ancestry from the people of the Globular Amphora culture. This mixing appears to have taken place largely between about 3000 and 2900 BC, probably somewhere in Eastern Europe. This mixed ancestry was then carried forward as the Corded Ware expanded through Europe and beyond. Exactly how that initial interaction unfolded remains one of the most fascinating questions in European prehistory. It's tempting to think that many of the features once thought to prove the Globular Amphora people were Indo-European may instead reflect cultural exchange between neighbouring societies, or that practices were inherited and absorbed along with the genetics of the people. Annoyingly though, it's not that simple. Some of the earliest known people buried according to Corded Ware customs were almost entirely steppe-derived genetically. In other words, the Corded Ware burial tradition itself had already begun to emerge before large-scale mixing with Globular Amphora communities. Instead, it seems like the Corded Ware phenomenon continued to develop during its encounters with the Globular Amphora and other late Neolithic societies. In regions such as Poland and Volhynia in Ukraine, they persisted alongside the newcomers for a time, and archaeological evidence suggests they even influenced the development of the Middle Dnieper culture. Some archaeologists even regard the Middle Dnieper culture as representing this prolonged zone of interaction. The final centuries of the Globular Amphora world appear to have been a period of coexistence, interaction, and, in some cases, gradual incorporation. By coexisted, I don't mean to imply this was static or peaceful. However, the genetic evidence suggests that while Globular Amphora ancestry survived in the Corded Ware people, their paternal lineages largely, not entirely, but largely, did not. This implies that the process of GAC admixture was strongly female biased. But the extent to which that resulted from warfare, social dominance, or other demographic processes like differences in reproductive success isn't clear. No matter how many euphemisms we use, and how much we point out we don't have the evidence to say for sure, it's impossible to avoid concluding that Corded Ware men killed most of the Globular Amphora men in the border zones between about 3000 and 2900 BC and took many of the surviving women for their wives. Communities competing over land, livestock and territory rarely avoid violence entirely, and the archaeological evidence shows that the late Neolithic could be an exceptionally dangerous time. This slaughter is best evidenced at the site of Koszyce in southern Poland. Here, archaeologists uncovered a mass grave containing 15 individuals dating to around 2800 BC. It seems like a community of Globular Amphora men, women and children were killed, presumably while most of the fighting age men were away from the settlement, maybe carrying out a raid of their own. We don't know who committed the massacre. It took place around the time the Corded Ware culture was expanding into the region, so it's easy to point the finger at them, but no direct evidence identifies the attackers. The pattern of injuries has led the researchers to conclude that the victims were probably captured and executed rather than killed in hand-to-hand combat, which makes sense considering they're women and children. And DNA testing revealed that almost everyone buried together belonged to a single extended family, and children had been laid beside their mothers and siblings beside siblings. Close relatives were carefully arranged so that family members remained together in death. The attackers had killed an entire community, but those who buried them, the survivors, clearly knew every individual personally. We don't know the full story, but it's clear that community-level violence formed part of life in this region during the centuries when the Globular Amphora and Corded Ware cultures interacted. Nor should we imagine the Globular Amphora people simply as passive victims. They had expanded across much of Central and Eastern Europe themselves, and conflict over land, livestock and territory likely involved many communities. But the genetic evidence does suggest that, in the end, the men of the Globular Amphora culture largely disappeared, while much of their ancestry lived on through the Corded Ware people. We can't know how much influence the Globular Amphora had on the later Corded Ware. It's so difficult to prove with any confidence. However, one artefact type intrigues me the most. These are the amber discs engraved with cruciform designs. Some archaeologists believe they carried solar symbolism, although we can't know that for certain. What's remarkable, however, is that similar circle cross motifs later become widespread in the solar iconography of Bronze Age Northern Europe. Whether this represents a genuine continuity of belief, or it's simply an independent use of a simple geometric design, remains an open question. But I wonder if some of the ideas and expressions of the far later Bronze Age solar cult could be traced back to this late Neolithic society. However, generally, the Globular Amphora culture eventually disappeared from the archaeological record as the Corded Ware horizon spread across much of northern and central Europe. Yet the people themselves did not vanish. As the Corded Ware expanded, they carried with them around a quarter Globular Amphora ancestry. Some later became part of the bell beaker phenomenon in Western Europe, while others expanded eastwards across the forest steppe, eventually reaching India and Iran. Their culture disappeared, but part of their ancestry continued to spread for thousands of years, and that legacy survives today in millions of people around the world. Thanks again to MyHeritage for sponsoring this video. If you want to find out about your ancient ancestry and support my channel at the same time, be sure to use the link in the description or scan the QR code and use my coupon code DANDNA to get your DNA kit for this crazy low price now. Thank you very much to my patrons and channel members for supporting the channel. This video was made for a Patreon supporter who wanted to know how his Globular Amphora ancestry emerged and persisted until today. Now, to find out more about the last of the Neolithic peoples of Europe, please watch this video now on the incredible megastructures of the Cucuteni Tripilia culture. Thank you for watching.